And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
JFK, physical fitness is not only one of the most important keys to a healthy body, it is the basis of a dynamic and creative intellectual activity. The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. One path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender or submission. The goal of education is the advancement of knowledge and the dissemination of truth. Man is still the most extraordinary computer of all. All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. Therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner. A man may die, nations may rise and fall, but an idea lives on. The pay is good and I can walk to work. Efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. We are tied to the ocean. Here we go. And when we go back to the sea, whether it is to sail or to watch, we are going back from whence we came. And that's when, right after he said that, he said we have the same percentage of salt in our blood than does the ocean. And it is on a video titled JFK in His Own Words. Very good. When written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. Opportunity of the ones underneath, right? The courage of life is often a less dramatic spectacle than the courage of a final moment. But it is no less of a magnificent mixture of triumph and tragedy. Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man, and man can be as big as he wants. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. The tax on capital gains directly affects investment decisions. The mobility and flow of risk capital, the ease or difficulty experienced by new ventures in obtaining capital, and thereby the strength and potential for growth in the economy. Those who dare to fail miserably can achieve greatly. Tolerance implies no lack of commitment to one's own beliefs. Rather, it condemns the oppression or persecution of others. Yes, it does. There are many people in the world who really don't understand, or say they don't, what is the great issue between the free world and the communist world. Let them. Geography has made us neighbors. History has made us friends. Economics has made us partners. And necessity has made us allies. Those whom God has so joined together, let no man put asunder. Unconditional war can no longer lead to unconditional victory. It can no longer serve to settle disputes. Amen. Can no longer be of concern to great powers alone. Yeah, the greatest powers are the ones at the most risk of being destroyed. I'm an idealist without illusions. Oh, I love that one. Our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. A man does what he must in spite of personal consequences, in spite of obstacles and dangers and pressures. And that is the basis of all human morality. The basic problems facing the world today are not susceptible to a military solution. Yeah, that's good. I think this is the most extraordinary collection of talent, of human knowledge, that has ever been gathered at the White House. with the possible exception of when Thomas Jefferson died alone. He must have been smart. We are not afraid to entrust the American people with unpleasant facts, foreign ideas, alien philosophies, and competitive values. Interesting choice of word. For a nation that is afraid to let its people judge the truth in falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people. In a time of domestic crisis, men of goodwill and generosity should be able to unite regardless of party or politics. Yes, absolutely. In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. Yeah, if there's a real reason. The Chinese use 2 brush strokes to write the word. Oh, we already got that one. Is that it? Forgive your enemies, but never forget their names. If by a liberal they mean someone who looks ahead and not behind, someone who welcomes new ideas without rigid reactions, someone who cares about the welfare of the people, their health, their housing, their schools, their jobs, their civil rights, and their civil liberties, someone who believes we can break through the stalemate and suspicions that grip us in our policies abroad. If that is what they mean by a liberal, then I'm proud to say I'm a liberal. We must find time to stop and thank the people who make a difference in our lives. Absolutely. There is nothing in the record of the past 2 years when both houses of Congress have been controlled by the Republican Party which can lead any person to believe that those promises will be fulfilled in the future. They follow the Hitler line. No matter how big the lie, repeat it often enough and the masses will regard it as truth. Interesting. You know, back then, I think Republicans and Democrats were a lot different. They seem a lot closer together today, to me. And, you know, by a conservative, you can't mean someone who's just a knee-jerk reactionary, you know, that wants to load a shotgun and lynch people. I'm not talking about that kind. There is a middle of the road. There is being conservative but being open to new ideas. I mean, you cannot close new ideas out. So if you do, then you're just going to keep doing the same crap over and over. New ideas spark interest. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. I fear that. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. That might be one of his best. Too often we hold fast to cliches of our forebears. We subject all facts to a prefabricated set of interpretations. We enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought. I thought it'd be the other way around. Victory has 100 fathers, defeat is an orphan. If a free society cannot help the many that are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. They didn't understand that. They just called him a coward. Libraries should be open to all except the censor. Now, the name censor was high in some ancient government. Was it Egypt? I can't remember. It was like the second highest. If we cannot end our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. Another one of his best. Do not pray for easy lives. Pray to be stronger men. I like that one. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. Mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. If this nation is to be wise as well as strong, if we are to achieve our destiny, then we need more new ideas for more wise men reading more good books in more public libraries. These libraries should be open to all, except the censor. We must know all the facts and hear all the alternatives and listen to all the criticisms. Let us welcome controversial books and controversial authors, for the Bill of Rights is the guardian of our security as well as our liberty. And I often wondered, did JFK know about Velikovsky? It would have been freaking so awesome if he would have, hey, let me talk to that guy. You know, you got some good ideas. Put a scientist on it. Order him. You son of a pup. You cannot hide the truth from the people. That's what makes me so doggone frustrated. It could be so much better. That is a beautiful line. I mean, he had a great mind. The great enemy of truth is very often not the lie, deliberate, contrived, and dishonest, but the myth, persistent, persuasive, and unrealistic. Too often we hold fast to the cliches of our forebears. We subject all facts to, okay, we already read that one. Absolutely. There was one in particular about politicians I wanted to find, but greater our knowledge increases, the more our ignorance unfolds. Once you say you're going to settle for second, that's what happens to you in life. We are not here to curse the darkness, but light the candle. That's been my phrase of the week. That can guide us through the darkness to a safe and sane future. John F. Kennedy quote. We would like to live as we once lived, but history will not permit it. If not us, who? If not now, when? Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Some people have taken that wrong. I do believe what he meant there was, what can you do to make the United States of America a better country to live in? That's what I think he meant. Life is never easy. There is work to be done and obligations to be met, obligations to truth, to justice, and to liberty. We have the power to make this the best generation of mankind in the history of the world, or make it the last. Things do happen. Things are made to happen. Shit happens. The rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. I love that one. The time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. There is, in addition to a courage with which men die, a courage by which men must live. The one unchangeable certainty is that nothing is certain or unchangeable. Let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer. Let us not seek to fix the blame for the past. Let us accept our own responsibility for the future. The supreme reality of our time is the vulnerability of our planet. We cannot negotiate with people who say what's mine is mine and what's yours is negotiable. The most powerful single force in the world today is neither communism nor capitalism. It's electricity. Neither the H-bomb nor the guided missile. It is man's eternal desire to be free and independent. And electricity. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. We don't even hear the word republic anymore. Those who foolishly sought power by riding the back of the tiger ended up inside. The ignorance of one voter in democracy impairs the security of all. Children are the world's most vulnerable resource and its best hope for the future. We need men who can dream of things and never were. Never were. Yes, that was John who actually said that. And say why. You know that one. I dream of things that never were and say why not. Just because we cannot see clearly the end of the road, that there's no reason for not setting out on the essential journey. And a couple more. The assassination of John F. Kennedy is considered to be a national tragedy, regardless of the struggles he faced during his term. He was seen by many as a man of vision, absolutely. To most people, up to this day, he was a hero, someone who could have done far more if not for his untimely death. And my personal favorite quote from John Kennedy is, "One person can make a difference, and everyone should try." Had he lived, just think of the possibilities of what our country could look like today. All right, that was my little reading for the day of John Kennedy quotes. Thank you.
That brought tragedy to the president and his family.
It was in August of '63, and Jacqueline Kennedy went into labor and prematurely delivered the baby Patrick. I was assigned to escort the baby up to the Children's Hospital in Boston. And about 8 o'clock that night, the president arrived. And in the meantime, we had learned, of course, the baby was 4 pounds, 10 ounces and was in grave condition. And we got into the elevator. The doctor briefed the president on the condition of his son, which was not optimistic. And we got off on the ICU unit, and we passed a room where there were 2 delightful little girls, and one had severe burns up her throat. Her bib had caught on fire, and the other girl had a similar but separate incidental burns down her arm and huge pods on the end of her hands. And President Kennedy stopped, and he said, "I'd like to write a note to the children." So the nurse scurries to the station and gets the name of the children, and Kennedy writes a note to each child. He just did this spontaneously. And he said, "Can you see they get this?" And there was no fanfare, there was no photo op, there was no press release or anything. It was just a matter of empathy and concern for someone else. And then we proceeded down the hall to see his son, who, of course, died the next day. This was part of the dichotomy of the man. You could see so many qualities that just glowed.
And who believed that the President of the United States should be the honorary chairman of a great fraternal organization and confine himself to ceremonial functions. But that isn't what the Constitution says. And I did not run for President of the United States to fulfill that office in that way. Harry Truman once said there are 14 or 15 million Americans who have the resources to have representatives in Washington to protect their interests. And that the interests of the great mass of the other people, 150 or 60 million, is the responsibility of the President of the United States, and I propose to fulfill it. Then I believe it is the business of the President of the United States to concern himself with the general welfare and the public interest, and if the people feel that it is not, then they should secure the services of a new President of the United States.
And other leading steel corporations increasing steel prices by some $6 a ton constitute a wholly unjustifiable and irresponsible defiance of the public interest. In this serious hour in our nation's history, when we are confronted with grave crises in Berlin and Southeast Asia, when we are devoting our energies to economic recovery and stability, when we are asking reservists to leave their homes and families for months on end, and servicemen to risk their lives, and 4 were killed in the last 2 days in Vietnam, and asking union members to hold down their wage requests at a time when restraint and sacrifice are being asked of every citizen, the American people will find it hard, as I do, to accept a situation in which a tiny handful of steel executives whose pursuit of private power and profit exceeds their sense of public responsibility can show such utter contempt for the interests of 185 million Americans. A few gigantic corporations have decided to increase prices in ruthless disregard of their public responsibilities. Some time ago, I asked each American to consider what he would do for his country, and I asked the steel companies. In the last 24 hours, we had their answer. I realize that there are some businessmen who feel only they want to be left alone, that government and politics are none of their affairs, that the balance sheet and profit rate of their own corporation are of more importance than the worldwide balance of power or the nationwide rate of unemployment. But I hope it's not rushing the season to recall to you the passage from Dickens' Christmas Carol, in which Ebenezer Scrooge is terrified by the ghost of his former partner, Jacob Marley. And Scrooge, appalled by Marley's story of ceaseless wandering, cries out, "But you were always a good man of business, Jacob." And the ghost of Marley, his legs bound by a chain of ledger books and cash boxes, replied, "Business? Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. Members and guests of the Florida State Chamber of Commerce, whether we work in the White House or the State House or in a house of industry or commerce, mankind is our business. And if we work in harmony, if we understand the problems of each other and the responsibilities that each of us bears, then surely the business of mankind will prosper. And your children and mine will move ahead in a secure world, and one in which there's opportunity for them all. Thank you.
No one was more hostile than the Southerners of the far right. Not only were the Kennedys showing themselves soft on communism and in favor of civil rights for black citizens throughout the South, but Kennedy had hurt their pockets by scaling back oil depletion tax credits.
But Texas was home to Kennedy's most dangerous opponents.
Oil millionaires and billionaires in Texas were petrified of one major factor that John F. Kennedy was considering, cutting the oil depletion allowance. And there was no way they were going to allow that. Essentially, they would save billions of dollars if it stays as it is. It was called a 27.5% oil depletion allowance. John Kennedy thought it was too liberal.
In 1954, the brushfire war in Indochina was almost 8 years old, and the French position had deteriorated. Hoping to draw the communist guerrillas into decisive open battle, the French made a stand at the fortress of Dien Bien Phu. But by mid-March, the French forces were surrounded and cut off. Military aid from the United States had made it possible for France to maintain the war. But in spite of an ever-increasing flow of supplies, the French cause appeared doomed. The question of American military intervention was raised.
This might have serious risks, but these risks are far less than would face us a few years from now if we dare not be resolute today.
Senator Kennedy felt otherwise.
I am reluctant to make any statement which may be misinterpreted as unappreciative of the gallant French struggle at Dien Bien Phu and elsewhere. But the speeches of President Eisenhower and Secretary Dulles and others have left too much unsaid. For if the American people are, for the fourth time in this century, to travel the long and tortuous road of war, particularly a war which we now realize would threaten the survival of civilization, then I believe we have a right to inquire in detail into the nature of the struggle in which we may become engaged. Certainly, I, for one, favor a policy of united action by many nations whenever necessary to achieve a military and political victory for the free world in that area, realizing full well that it may require some commitment of manpower. But to pour money, material, and men into the jungles of Indochina without at least a remote prospect of victory would be dangerously futile and self-destructive. Of course, all discussions of united action assume the inevitability of such victory. But such assumptions are not unlike similar predictions of confidence which have lulled the American people for many years. I am frankly of the belief that no amount of American military assistance in Indochina can conquer an enemy which is everywhere and at the same time nowhere. An enemy of the people which has the sympathy and covert support of the people. If the French persist in their refusal to grant the legitimate independence and freedom desired by the peoples of the Associated States, and if those peoples and the other peoples of Asia remain aloof from the conflict as they have in the past, then it is my hope that Secretary Dulles will recognize the futility of channeling American men and machines into that hopeless struggle.
Just proved that by the actual test that we've made.
How did it happen? They hit Connolly.
Connolly turned to the president when the first shot was fired, and I think in that turning it was where he got hit.
If he hadn't turned, he probably wouldn't have got hit.
I think that's very likely.
When the president got hit, the second one?
No, the president wasn't hit with the second one.
I say if Connolly hadn't been in his way.
Oh yes. The president no doubt would have been hit.
He'd been hit 3 times.
He would have been hit 3 times. On the 5th floor of that building where we found the...
The one thing I'm wondering is, if he was shot from the rear by Lee Harvey Oswald, how could Connolly have gotten in the way? That implies he was shot from the front, doesn't it? Hoover had to know that. This must have been a Freudian slip or something.